So I've been listening to a lot of debates lately, and I've also taken to, you know, doing a little more writing as opposed to videos. There have been a few videos I've been producing lately. I was going to do tonight the latest update on what's going on in Brazil, or actually part two to yesterday's video, but I kind of took a break because I was distracted by a number of the debates that were going on. Of course, Politicon was this weekend, but there were also about 4 or 5 actual candidate debates in the elections that are going on. And I've been basically watching so many of them that I'm wondering exactly how many people actually do watch these in the states that they're in. I've seen the one in Nevada, Missouri, in the Florida gubernatorial debate, and I really am seeing kind of a pattern here where people who are incumbents seem to be able to handle themselves pretty well. Even Claire McCaskill, who I thought was the most incompetent idiot in the Senate or possibly in all of Congress, she didn't do too bad in her debate. She also didn't especially impress me. And her opponent, Josh Hawley, I think did okay, but I don't think he really made a case that would uh, have changed somebody's opinion over in Missouri. And it's kind of brought me to this state where I'm trying to decide exactly what is the value of debating in modern society. What's the value of this type of discourse when you're trying to get people to do something and to persuade them? And in many cases, I'd say that debate is really only some sort of way for people to signal to their audience, the audience that already likes them, to get them to really put action behind their support. And then, of course, you have some cases. Some cases you have debates where you really do change people's minds and you really do open up people to new ideas. I don't think that necessarily happens in these candidate debates. I mean, I'll go through a few of them that I've seen in recent weeks. The least impressive ones, I'll go first, are the ones that happened here in Ohio between the gubernatorial candidates. I guess it would be Richard Cordry and Mike DeWine, who I don't think either person was impressive at all. I think Cordry totally confirmed my impression of him as a plastic man owned by Lizzie Warren, basically this paper candidate. Mike DeWine also wasn't very interesting, and that's the situation you have here in Ohio, a state where, I mean, we're not lacking for problems here, but you just can't seem to get people that actually have a real idea. You don't even have people that are able to actually mount a competent attack on the opponent, because DeWine constantly harps on Cordry's rape kit scandal when he was Attorney General. And then Cordray will talk, I think he talks more about the opiates crisis and some other crap, talking about, they're not really the most competent candidates in any respect. Even somebody I know who really hates Richard Cordray, who is, kind of the classic neocon Republican, says he's not thrilled to vote for Mike DeWine. Then you have James Renacci and Sherrod Brown. I've talked a lot about that. I don't like Sherrod Brown at all. I don't think that he did bad in his debate. And I think that based on what I'm seeing now, I think he'll probably defeat Jim Renacci, because Renacci simply doesn't have the competence. He doesn't know how to pierce the Brown's protective zone. Sherrod Brown is able to get people to ignore the fact that he is basically a partisan hack himself, just like Renacci. So he's able to pretty much cobble together enough votes from people who are like, well, he represents the state competently enough, we're just going to vote for him again. That's Sherrod Brown, and he's probably going to be senator again, which I'm not happy about. But you have to at least give him credit, because he did perform decently in the debate, even though the debate itself was crap and you didn't really learn anything. Then some of the more impressive debates was Debbie Stabenow versus John James. Two people that I think did very well in the debates. Debbie Stabenow, can't say I agree with her on much, but I think she performed very well. She actually had, you know, there's a certain grace about somebody like her who I think did defend her record in the Senate very well. Although John James, I think, did kind of make the case that nothing had been gained from anything that she'd done in the Senate. So, that I think would be a draw. So you have three draws, two of them that are pretty boring and inconclusive. Those would be the two Ohio debates. The Michigan debate is it's a draw, but you have two people that are at least compelling. And then I saw the ones in Nevada as well as Arizona. And in those two, I think that the Democrats really came up short. The one in Arizona, you had Kristen Sinema, who was, I think, really a disaster and came off. She didn't seem genuine at all. Her opponent, McSally, looked pretty. I don't know what to say, but she didn't look bad like Sinema did. She seemed to be a little more emphatic and convinced about what she was saying. I think what you saw with Kristen Sinema was that she was working off of a script in order to conceal some of her actual views. And McSally, I think, was able to get. I don't know what McSally's real views are, but she didn't come off as fake. Okay, and after this video, I will come and do a different video about political discourse in general. So then there was the Nevada debate, and in that one, it was Jackie Rosen, the challenger, against the incumbent Dean Heller, and I think Dean Heller showed again, just like McCaskill in Missouri, Dean Heller in Nevada seemed like a really confident incumbent, knew how to basically show that he had brought home receipts from Washington. In fact, he talked a lot about legislation he'd worked on, including the tax bill, for example, and various immigration measures, defending public lands from being sold to private corporations. So yeah, I have every confidence. Just like I said with Ohio, I think that Sherrod Brown will probably survive, even though I don't want him to. I think Dean Heller will survive. I think both of them deserve it at this point, based on their performance in the campaigns, not based on their positions. Okay, let's be clear about that. Then there was the most bitter debate I saw was the Florida debate between Andrew Gillum, the Democrat, and Ron DeSantis. Those two clearly don't like each other. They think that they're, each one thinks that the other one is scum of the earth. And it showed through the debate. And I don't know if I paid attention, but I didn't see them shake hands afterward. So that brings me to, really, and I'm sorry I have to say this at the end because maybe the rest of this might have sounded a little boring and humdrum, but when you're talking about actual candidate debates, I don't often see in the modern era, except for the Trump debates and things like that. You don't see very often huge punches being landed. Now there are some moments that the media will take and magnify them. A good example, I believe in 1980, or I guess it was Governor Reagan at the time, was debating President Carter, who was running for re-election. And Carter said some sort of remark that was talking about, I think it was Reagan being an extremist. And Reagan's had that moment where he says, "There you go again." And for some reason, people thought that really was the turning point when Carter began to fall apart, because Reagan was able to make it seem like Carter was being ridiculous and overly aggressive and insecure. So those are things that people pick up on. Those are emotional cues that you see in some of these debates. There was another one, I believe it was in 1984, between Walter Mondale. These are ones that I know because I didn't live back then. I wasn't born until 85. So, but Walter Mondale in 1984 was debating Gary Hart, the senator from from Colorado, and Mondale, who had been vice president, basically was listening to Gary Hart describe himself, and he's like, well, you really haven't done anything. Where's the beef? And Where's the Beef became really, I think they stole it from that Wendy's commercial or something, but it became sort of this trophy of certain political advisors of Mondale's. I think Bob Beckel was one of them, this fat ass who used to be on Fox News, who used to hang it around his neck like basically, or around his waist like a championship belt. The fact that he'd come up with the line, "Where's the beef?" And in reality, that one was a line that sunk the candidacy of Gary Hart, but it didn't necessarily launch the candidacy of Walter Mondale. So that's a little different from what happened with Ronald Reagan, because on the one hand, with Ronald Reagan, you have him fending off, just an attack by Carter at that point, and with Walter Mondale, he just had a successful attack against Gary Hart. So you're talking about offensive versus defensive scores in a debate. What are some other ones? There was one that I covered. I believe I covered in an article where Jerry Brown in 1992 attempted to claim that Bill Clinton is basically a crook and you can't trust him and he has a credibility problem. And then he started talking about how he steers business to Hillary in Arkansas. And even though everything that Jerry Brown said was true, because Bill Clinton very coolly and without any hint of emotion basically dismissed everything he said and claimed that Gary Brown basically called Jerry Brown a joke, and that he changed his. I think the moment that struck with me was that Jerry Brown reinvents himself every few years. Bill Clinton was the type of person who you didn't really see him bringing big ideas into the conversation every time, although he did have some. But Bill Clinton was somebody who could debate very competently. And then there was a great barren space of, 18 or 20 years when, most of the debaters that have come since then have been pretty much garbage. John McCain and George Bush, and then there was, who were some of the other ones? Al Gore, I think, only had to debate one guy in the primary, and then there was 2008. And 2008, there were some interesting debates, such as Rand Paul, I believe, Ron Paul he went off on Rudy Giuliani, started talking about how despite all of Giuliani's fist banging on the podium and everything, the U.S. was still at war, and it was basically alienating America to the rest of the world. That was a debate moment that changed my life. And, I have to thank Ron Paul, even though I don't necessarily, sometimes he does seem like a crazy nutcase to me, but this is a person who really changed the way I look at the world in a moment, saying that, these military commitments, they're alienating the rest of the world from us, and we're trying to, basically police them, and at the same time running up our own debt. That was, I believe, the moment that I realized that you don't have to be one of these war hawk neoconservatives if you're not a liberal. And it's helped form my worldview since then, even though sometimes I think that he takes it totally to the extreme, doesn't really realize that there are instances where the U.S. does have to employ force. And then, of course, there have been some moments since then that have been important debate moments. There was Obama's Russia remark against Romney, claiming, I think he said the 1980s called, they want their foreign policy back. It sounded incredibly great. That was an incredibly sick burn back at the time. Hasn't aged well. So, I think that these political debates are not necessarily helping to to disseminate ideas. Okay, the political debates themselves. I'm not talking about some of these other, when you go to Oxford or the Monk debates, for example, which for the Jordan Peterson versus Michael Eric Dyson debate, for example, was a complete waste of time in the same way that some of these political debates are. But I would say that, and here I'm going to get into something that I'll probably cover in my next video, which is coming up in a couple minutes. But, some of the things like the Tucker Carlson versus Cenk Uygur debate, you see somebody really come out of their shell and show something that people weren't expecting, and basically, blow the doors off the building. Okay, but at that moment, so you can't go into a debate, I think, expecting necessarily for every single question to land the right way and for you to remember every single remark that you wanted to say. It's a difficult proposition. I'm not a debater. I talk about debate just like I talk about stand-up comedy. These are two things that I observe, but I don't really do. So that's about it. Please let me know what your thoughts are. If you think debates are worth it, if there's a particular debate moment that you think was a signature of your life. I know that I probably missed a few. And that's about it. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds. Also, share the video and comment when it uploads. And contribute on Patreon.